Hello and welcome to this video of Inside Stream. I'm your host Dr. Manmohan Yadav, and in this video I will be talking about the frontline updates that have been coming in the past few days, while at the same time it is noteworthy that yesterday, as India celebrated its Independence Day, another historical event was taking place in Anchorage in Alaska. President Putin landed in Alaska to meet President Trump in a historic summit that has been organized in order to arrange for peace between Russia and Ukraine. Now, when President Putin must have arrived in Anchorage, it is said that he must be under constant pressure from the Russian officials not to give any ground. And President Putin must also be aware of the fact that he is arriving in Alaska from a position of strength. If you look at the front lines, there are several informations, there are several updates that are coming from the Russian Ministry of Defense and also from the Telegram channels of Ukraine and as well as the Russian mappers. Let us look at some of the details that I have with me. These events have taken place in the past 24 hours. Now, according to the statement that has been issued by the Russian Ministry of Defense, the Russian army is currently in control of the entire western border of Donetsk. Further, the Russian forces have occupied the border regions of Dnipropetrovsk. In Pokrovsk, there are reports that Ukraine has deployed over 6 brigades in order to stop the Russian forces from advancing. The Russian forces have maintained a constant pressure on the Ukrainian forces all along the front lines, and the Ukrainian government has also come under criticism for deploying 6 brigades in order to stop the Russian forces, while at the same time various other border regions which are also under constant attack from the Russian forces are facing extreme pressures and a shortage of men and material. The 6 brigades that were deployed on the front lines to stop the Russian forces in Pokrovsk have said to have launched several counterattacks, and it is also reported that almost all of these counterattacks have failed, and any advantage that must have been exercised by the numerically superior Russian forces is still there, and the Ukrainians are still struggling to hold off the Russian steamroller. In fact, the American generals in Pentagon have described the Russian advance as a lava flow which is slow but consistent, and it is something that cannot be stopped. Now, if you look at the reports that are coming from the front lines, there are also several statements from the Telegram channels that state that the Russian forces have broken through the front lines of Kupiansk, Liman, and also the region of Konstantinovka, while launching constant missile and drone attacks all over the Ukrainian territory and also deep inside the Ukrainian territory, especially on the energy infrastructure, the fuel depots, ammunition depots, the ammunition manufacturing plants, and other drone manufacturing facilities. The Ukrainian army is under constant pressure from the Russian forces, and there is an acute shortage of ammunition, guns, and also artillery pieces. In the beginning of the war, it was said that this war has degraded into a World War I style war, where both the armies are constantly facing each other in a World War I style battle, showering each other with artillery shells. Now, the situation on the border is such that the Russian forces are constantly advancing. The Russian artillery is constantly providing active support to the Russian forces that are advancing and fighting in the region, while at the same time the Ukrainian forces are reluctant to use any form of artillery out of the fear that their artillery pieces will be destroyed if they ever came into contact with the Russian forces. The Russian drones and Russian counter-artillery fire has inflicted huge amounts of damage and resulted in losses for the Russian artillery units in the past 2 to 3 years. The supply of artillery shells is dwindling. It is said that the Russians are firing anywhere between 10,000 to 15,000 artillery shells in a single day, whereas the Ukrainians are struggling to fire even 2,000 shells in a single day of the conflict. the Russian forces, the Russian drone operators, and other counter battery personnel and drone hunting teams have said to have become very proficient in tracking, jamming, and even shooting down the Ukrainian drones. These drones, which are being used by the Ukrainian forces to hunt Russian soldiers and to attack the Russian positions, while at the same time, the Ukrainians are also using these drones to provide supplies to the frontline units of the Ukrainian forces. No doubt that President Putin is fully aware of these developments on the border regions, and therefore he must be very confident when landing in Alaska, knowing that he is going to a meeting, a summit, where he can negotiate with the Americans from a position of strength. Moving on to the Americans and the Western allies of America, the Western nations are currently facing a huge budgetary crisis. They are facing deindustrialization, while at the same time, there is a constant decline in the industrial output of these nations for the past 3 years. Americans know that the military arsenal, the Russians know that the military arsenal of the NATO nations are dwindling, they are almost exhausted, and the production of the weapon systems in in America and the Western European regions is not able to keep up with the demands of the Ukrainian forces in war with the Russians. Therefore, it is very clear that the Western nations are seeking a way out to stop this conflict, and they have been pressuring the Russians for a ceasefire, which Russia has been categorically denying, and there have been several criticisms of President Putin in the Western media for not complying with the Western demand of the ceasefire. Now, if you look at the Ukrainian population, the population is said to be completely exhausted, and the population itself is not willing to fight the war with the Russians anymore. The Ukrainian army is exhausted as it has to constantly shuffle units from one part of the border regions to another, wherever the Russians are stronger, in order to stem the tide of the Russian advance. Knowing these facts, there is no wonder that Putin, who is under constant pressure to accept the NATO demands for peace, is not going to give an inch, and he is very likely to hold his ground in front of them. And that is what exactly he did in this particular summit, where Putin and President Trump spent almost 3 hours talking to each other, negotiating with each other, and Putin has made his demands very clear that as long as the Russian security interest is understood and the Russian security concerns are addressed, there will be no stop to this particular conflict. Now, my apologies. In this meeting, which lasted for more than 3 hours, it is to be noted that not a single military commander or a military personnel or any individual who is associated with the armed forces of either the Russian nation or the America was present in this particular meeting. Those that were present were the heads of state, obviously Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump, while at the same time they were accompanied by the ministers and officials of various departments such as trade and commerce, finance and investment from both the sides. So this was a meeting where the financial interests of both the nations were of a primary concern. Of course, Ukraine must have been discussed by both, and it was discussed by both the leaders, but there have been no conclusive outcomes in that regard. In my next video, I will be talking about the summit itself and what President Putin said in this particular summit and how President Trump has responded to it. That is all for this particular video. Thank you very much. Thank you.